Uptime Kuma is a free and open source monitoring and notification system for your critical servers and services. In this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to install Uptime Kuma in Docker, including firewall rules, so that you can get your own monitoring system up and running very quickly. Now, this is a super fun and easy project, and definitely highly recommended even if you're just starting out in IT or with your home lab. Knowing when your important servers and services are down is a key part of your overall network health. Okay, let's get started. All right, so to make your life easier, I have created a full blog post with step-by-step instructions that you can just copy paste. And honestly, this whole project takes no more than like 10 or 15 minutes, even if you're starting from complete scratch. So here is the blog post right here, and I will have a link down in the description so that you can get to this yourself. All right, so complete setup guide on DigitalOcean with Docker. So let's start there. We're going to be installing this into DigitalOcean, but Uptime Kuma is a monitoring tool. But just because it's a monitoring tool doesn't mean it's magic, right? So if you have internal services behind your firewall and you're installing Uptime Kuma on the outside of your firewall, like on the internet in a DigitalOcean droplet using Docker, Uptime Kuma is not going to be able to see into your firewall and measure the health of the devices on your LAN. It can only monitor and notify stuff that it knows about or stuff that it can see, right? So you might have to have multiple instances of Uptime Kuma, right? You might have one on the outside world that's looking at all your services from the outside, and you might have a different one installed inside your LAN looking at your internal LAN devices. Like if you wanted to monitor all of your, your firewall and all of your switches and your access points, something like that. So just keep that in mind when you're installing this. Uptime Kuma isn't magic. It can only monitor what it can see, but then once it notices that something's down, it can send you notifications in like a ton of different ways. So all right, let's take a look at this now. Now, while I'm doing this in DigitalOcean, there are tons of different virtual server providers, AWS and Azure and Linode and Vultr and all these different ones. Basically, as long as you can get to Docker, and you have a server that has Docker installed, the rest of this is going to fall right in line. The rest of the instructions are going to be exactly the same. So while I'm doing this in Docker on DigitalOcean because I think it's super easy to do it that way, just get to Docker however you can. So we're going to start here with DigitalOcean. And in DigitalOcean, I'm going to say create, and we're going to go to droplets. I'm going to pick a data center close to me. San Francisco is fine. And then what I want to do here under choose an image is I want to click on Marketplace. And when Marketplace pops up, we're going to see right here, we have Docker on Ubuntu 22.04. So they basically have a vanilla version of Ubuntu 22.04 that comes pre-installed with Docker already. So we don't have to worry about installing it. That is going to work great for this deployment. For the size of the droplet, I'm just going to choose a regular size droplet, and we're going to go with the $6 a month version. This should be plenty fine if you have a small amount of services that you are monitoring for. And I don't even know what the upper limit is. I would say 20 or less, right? When you get beyond that, you might want to bump up to a higher level of droplet or a bigger virtual server. Not necessarily because this is intensive on the CPU, but because there might be log files where you need extra space. Those log files tend to grow over time. But for now, we're going to stick with the $6 a month version. Scrolling down a little bit more, we are just going to password protect our instance. You can do an SSH key. That's recommended if you're doing this in production because it's a little bit more secure. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to go with root and then a password to authenticate into our virtual server. Okay, so I generated a strong password and we will pop that in there, and then scrolling down towards the bottom, we want to give it a host name. Now this is optional. This is just, as far as DigitalOcean is concerned, this is just a friendly name that you're giving the server. I always like to put the actual fully qualified domain name here. Makes it easier for me when I'm looking through a whole list of droplets. So we're going to say uptimekuma.crosstalknetworking.com. And now we're going to say create droplet. This droplet shouldn't take more than, 15, 20 seconds to create, and then we're gonna see the IP address that was given to the droplet. The first thing you wanna do is take that IP address and then create a DNS A record that points to that IP address. So I created uptimekuma.crosstalknetworking.com. So let's go ahead into my DNS provider, which in this case is gonna be Cloudflare, and we will create that DNS A record. Super important for let's encrypt when we get further down in this tutorial. So here is the IP address that I was given. We're gonna say copy. And then over here in Cloudflare, this is gonna be very similar for whatever DNS provider you have. You just have to find where your DNS is hosted, add a new A record. So we're gonna say add record. And we can see type is A. We're gonna say Uptime Kuma. And then we're gonna paste in the IP address. And since this is Cloudflare, I'm gonna turn off the proxy. I only want just a straight A record, and we're gonna say save. Okay, so now I have my server created. It has Ubuntu, it has Docker. Let's go ahead and log in, and then the first thing we're gonna do is update that server. All right, so I'm using PuTTY, but you can use whatever SSH client you like best. There we go, and we're gonna log in as root, and then we're gonna use the root password that I generated for this project, and we are logged in. So now, first thing I wanna do is update this server, make sure we are on the latest and greatest everything. So we're gonna say sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade -y. And of course, I know I logged in as root, so I don't technically have to use sudo or sudo, depending on how you like to say it, commands, but it's just force of habit. Okay, the server is now up to date, and here we need to make a decision. Do we want to take the easy way out for the Uptime Kuma installation, or do we want to do a little bit more of an advanced installation that is more robust, right? So when I say the easy way out, if you go to the GitHub page for Uptime Kuma and you scroll down, you can see that there's this Docker command that's just one line. And if you run this command, you will have Uptime Kuma in a Docker container running and working. And then all you have to do is connect to it with a browser, HTTP on port 3001, and yes, you are working fine. However, you are on HTTP. You are on a non-standard port. So what we're gonna do is a little bit more robust installation that also uses a proxy to change HTTPS 443 and then redirect over to 3001. But if you're just running Uptime Kuma behind your firewall, like on a server that has a bunch of other Docker containers and you just want it to work and you wanna monitor local stuff in your home lab, it's perfectly fine to just use this command just to get it up and running. But since we're not going to take the easy way out for the purposes of this installation, let's go ahead and run through these commands. It's really not that much more difficult to do it this way. So first thing we want to do is create a directory for Uptime Kuma. We're going to say make dir uptime kuma -proxy. Then we're going to change directory into that folder. And we're gonna create a Caddy file, configuration file. Because Caddy is the proxy server that we're gonna be running as a separate Docker container that's gonna take web traffic coming in on 443, HTTPS 443, and convert it over to the Docker container, which is running Uptime Kuma on port 3001. So we're gonna say nano-w Caddy file to both create and edit that file. And then I'm gonna grab this right here, copy this information, and shift insert to paste it in. Now where it says status.yourdomain.com, this is where you wanna put your actual FQDN that you're using as part of your installation. So in my case, it's uptimekuma.crosstalknetworking.com, and then Control X, Y, enter to save and exit. Now we're going to create a Docker Compose file. And this is basically just a Docker configuration file for multiple Docker containers and how we want those Docker containers configured. So you can see here, we've got one for Uptime Kuma, and we've got a second one for Caddy, and then we've got some various other settings down here for volumes and networks. But it's a pretty simple Docker Compose file. And of course, this is a YAML file, a .yml file, meaning that the syntax and the spacing of this has to be exactly perfect or it's not going to work. So just copy and paste what I've put in here. So we're going to say nano-w docker-compose.yaml or .yml. And then we're going to grab all of this here. There's nothing to reconfigure, just copy and paste, shift insert, and you can see that everything, whoop, I can't scroll up, I forgot. You can see that everything is in here, there we go. And now we're going to Control X, yes, enter to save that file. So now we have our proxy configuration done. We have our Docker Compose file created. The next thing we have to do is just run the Docker Compose file, and it's going to download those two projects, set up the Docker containers, start the Docker containers, and then we're basically done. So we're going to say Docker Compose up-d. There we go. It's now pulling in both Caddy and Uptime Kuma. This shouldn't take more than just 30 seconds or so, depending on the speed of your internet connection. So now we see we've created the network, we've created the volumes, we've created both of those containers or started both those containers. If we want to verify that those containers are running, we can say Docker PS, and then we can say Caddy here, and right below it we can see Uptime Kuma, and we can see that the status is healthy. All right, so now you should be able to open up the FQDN that we created the A record for in a browser. No port necessary, and you want to use HTTPS because it did get a Let's Encrypt certificate, and it should work. Let's see. Boom, there we go. So uptimekuma.crosstalknetworking.com, and we have the create admin account or the default installation wizard for Uptime Kuma. If we click on the little icon here, connection is secure, certificate is valid, we can see that it is Let's Encrypt. All right, perfect. So let's now create our username. We'll say admin, and then I'm just going to reuse the same password that I used for the root user, and we're going to say create. And that's it. All right, Uptime Kuma is now up and running and ready to start monitoring services. So let's add a new monitor. We're going to say add a new monitor. We'll just do HTTPS, and I'm going to monitor crosstalksolutions.com. So we'll say Crosstalk Solutions main website, and we'll say crosstalksolutions.com, and it's going to check every 60 seconds. Retries means if it checks every 60 seconds, how many times do we want to repeat that check if it's down before we actually notify you? But I'm going to take defaults on all the rest here, and then we're just going to say save. And there we go. We can see that this website is up, crosstalksolutions.com. Everything's looking good. What if I also wanted to create a ping monitor for crosstalksolutions.com? This is good if you have like an FTP server or any other non-HTTP server that you want to monitor that is available by just pinging it, right? So let's do that next. This, by the way, is also good for pinging inbound to your own WAN IP address to determine whether or not your internet connection has gone down. So we'll add new monitor. For monitor type, we're going to say ping, but let's take a second here and look at all of these different monitor types that we have. We've got DNS, we can monitor Docker containers, and then some even like really specific ones like Steam Gaming Server, Radius Server, Microsoft SQL, etc. So there's a lot of different stuff that you can monitor out of the box with Uptime Kuma. We'll keep it easy. We're just going to say ping crosstalksolutions.com. And then the host name is www.crosstalksolutions.com. And we're going to say save. And we can see that that service is up as well. Now, if I had a bunch of stuff that I wanted to group together, we can also do that. So if I go and edit, for example, Crosstalk Solutions and scroll down here under advanced, Notice that it's not in a group and I'd have to create one. So let's create a group. We'll just call this Crosstalk Solutions Monitor Group, whatever we want to call it. Confirm. And then save that. And now if we go back to the dashboard, we can see that I've got this group here, which contains just this one service. And then I've got a separate service for ping crosstalksolutions.com. Let's add this one to the group as well. So we're going to edit that. We're going to drop this down. The group's already there and save. And now both of those services are part of that same group right here. I can also create status pages based on individual monitors or based on those same groups. So if we go to status pages, we're going to add a new one. We'll just call this Crosstalk Status. And then by default, it's /status if I only have one, right? But maybe I want to have a bunch of different groups, a bunch of different status pages. I can add an additional slug like Crosstalk here. And then we'll say next. And now I pick which monitors or groups I want to add into this status page. So we're going to add both of my two monitors. If you add a group, it shows you the status for the entire group. I like having the status for the individual monitors. And then over here, we can even say show certificate expiry. So for something like an HTTPS monitor and our Let's Encrypt certificate, it'll show us how long until that certificate expires. So we're going to say save. And here we go. So here is my Crosstalk status page, and we can see my all systems operational. We've got my two services that I am monitoring, and we can see for crosstalksolutions.com, we've got a certificate expiration of 53 days. If I come over here to the top right, I can also say maintenance, and I can schedule maintenance, scheduled maintenance. And then, blah, blah, blah. This is what we're going to be doing. Pick the affected monitors and show it on, our status page. And then maybe we want to set it up for a specific time. Okay, so now I've created a maintenance window. If I go back to the status page, that should be displayed. There we go. Scheduled maintenance, my note, and then we have the time window that we are under maintenance. And this is great, right? We are now monitoring all of our different servers and services that we've added to Uptime Kuma, but what about notifications? What if something goes down? How do we get notified in the event of an outage? That's what we're going to do next. So if we go to the dashboard, which looks like we're already there, we can say, let's check our main website. We're going to edit that, and then right here we can say set up notification. So we're going to say notification, and then look at all these different notification types that you have. Everything, Discord, email, Home Assistant, Microsoft Teams, Signal, Slack, Splunk, Twilio, Webhook, and then a bunch of different regional ones as well. In our case, we're just going to set up a simple Discord webhook so that if a service goes down, it pushes out to a Discord channel and notifies us. And we're going to call this Crosstalk, or we'll call this Uptime Kuma. And then we need our Discord webhook URL. So let's grab that next. Now I have already created a channel called Uptime Kuma in Discord. I was using this to test earlier, but if we come in here and edit that channel, obviously give it whatever permissions for whomever needs to see the notification. If we come down here to integrations, we can add a webhook. In this case, I've already added one, but we can say copy webhook URL, paste that into here. And then down here, we can say default enabled. So basically any new monitors that we add to Uptime Kuma are automatically going to have this notification enabled. And we can also apply it to all of our existing monitors. You can even add a prefix message like system down, and then it'll give you all the information about which monitor is down. Let's say test here. In fact, let me bring up Discord side by side. Okay, there we go. So here is my Discord channel for the Uptime Kuma notifications. When I say test, boom, right there, Uptime Kuma notification testing. It sends successfully through that webhook into Discord, so I know if one of these monitors goes down or has some downtime, it will notify over to Discord. So let's go ahead and save that. And that's basically all there is to it. However, we are not quite locked down yet. We created this DigitalOcean droplet, and right now it's wide open to the whole internet. So let's add some firewall rules to make sure we lock it down a little bit tighter. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, allow SSH, but only from my WAN IP address. I'm the only one who can SSH into this server. And then we're gonna allow from the rest of the world 80 for the Let's Encrypt certificate renewal, as well as port 443 for the main interface of Uptime Kuma. And again, I have all of the instructions for how to do all of this, including the firewall rules, on my blog post, and there is a link down below in the description. So the first thing we want to do is say sudo ufw allow from, and now you want to give your WAN IP address. I have 1234 in here, but substitute that with your own WAN IP address to any port 22. This is SSH. We are locking it down so that only we can access this server via SSH. Okay, and then we want to allow both HTTP and HTTPS. HTTP is going to be for our Let's Encrypt certificate renewal, whereas HTTPS is the main interface of Uptime Kuma. We will say sudo ufw allow 443/TCP and 80/TCP. And then finally, we want to turn on the UFW firewall with sudo ufw enable. Okay, so there you have it. Super quick, super easy, and you are well on your way to monitoring all of your important servers and services. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Did I leave anything out? Are there other monitoring tools that you prefer to Uptime Kuma? I'd love to hear about it. All right, we will see you guys in the next video.